Hi, I'm Jazz and I'm an alcoholic and I'm codependent. I work a 12-step program and I seek health. I am a seeker and a traveler in my journey. Okay, so I do 12-step programs and I work them really hard. I came into Coda, and because I had a lot of emotional pain, I was in an emotional crisis and I didn't know how to deal with my pain. I didn't know how to figure out, I didn't know why I was really stuck in my control, and I hadn't developed self-esteem fully yet. So I was in this place of I just couldn't even stand myself. I couldn't take it anymore. I tried everything and I couldn't figure things out, and I was looking for answers. I was searching fearlessly for what the heck is going on with me. And I got to, I had been thinking about going to a Coda room for years before I even went to one. It took me a lot of courage to even go and even sit down, and then it took me a lot of courage to continue and to keep going and sitting down and being in those rooms. So it's it took me a while, and when I got there, to this day, it is hard to explain what codependency is, what a codependent is. Am I codependent? It's a mysterious question because there isn't really much of an answer or definition. And in Coda, they actually have a definition about how there isn't a definition. And and basically codependency is different for each person. Everybody has their own codependency to a degree, and I think the point is to get to the middle and to find a healthy balance in relationships regarding myself, my higher power, and others, and the world. So it's my codependency is going to look a lot different than my friends or my mother's codependency, and it's all going to come from a different set of roots from possibly childhood or whatever. But I am, the way that I cope and am in relation to the world and people in my life is very different than someone else. My codependency is, when I first came in, I was a control freak, and I thought that was a fine way to be, and I had a really low self-esteem, and I thought I actually had some self-esteem, and then I learned that there's more patterns of this codependent behavior, and I learned about all the avoidant patterns, the compliant patterns, first half and second half of control, and first and second half of the avoidant behaviors and denial. And so when I started coming to the rooms and started really digging deep and changing those things, my resentment list got a lot smaller. I don't do as many step fours because I'm not hitting those same walls with people, places, and things. So life is a lot more manageable, by digging into the roots of the issues and figuring out my specific codependent patterns and then changing those into recovery patterns. So what is codependency? To a degree, it is whatever it is to me, and what my codependent ways are is my codependency, and what I want to do with that and how much I want to recover is also up to me and my recovery. So it's my choice how codependent or how recovery free I want to be. So some simple or some easier examples of some of the things that I used to do in my codependency and I'm just going to give you a few examples, is I used to trade in my own values for other people's approval. I would compromise my values, and I don't even know, like, it seems crazy to think I used to do that, but having a family and having a safe environment at home and having emotional safety in my home for me and my kids is a value of mine. And I compromised that, and I compromised that for years. And I would be in my control trying to change the other person and to create that safety. And so I learned that, like, my value wasn't getting respected, even though I put in all my efforts. The only thing I had to do was, I was left with the last option was to actually move. But by staying, I was compromising my values. I didn't leave before trying everything, but, now I would never put me and my kids in that situation. If there isn't that emotional safety, in the home, I'm not going to subject them to that. And I just feel like that's my job as a parent and a mom. And, I've worked really hard, and I want the best for them. So anyways, I used to compromise my values a lot more, and it's not something I compromise anymore. Put my own interests aside, like things that I like to do. I would turn my music off when a certain person would come in the room because they didn't like it. Like, I would not be who I was. I was scared of what they thought, and I was scared of being judged, and I didn't feel comfortable, around certain people, and I would hide myself. And I'm not in that position where I want to hide myself anymore, and especially in intimate relationships. So a huge thing in my self-growth is doing the things I'm interested in and honoring those interests and finding out what they are. And that is good work. Like, I don't put my interests aside anymore. So, that's part of being my authentic self, is to do the things that I like to do, no matter what people think, to get to that place. Like, that's where I'm going. That's what I'm doing. I used to be extremely hypervigilant. This was a bad one for me. And I used to be checking. I would check my temperature by sticking the thermometer into you and check my temperature that way. And, now I check my own temperature. I check my own feelings. I have my own feelings, but if you weren't okay, I wasn't okay. And that was a really painful one to live with. And I am way less hypervigilant today because of working on that codependent behavior. And, like, convincing others, explaining to others, not being direct, not sticking up for myself, not setting boundaries, not being vulnerable. I would also invite rejection and anger and shame. I would say comments that would get me a negative reaction, because I was mad at something, because I was resentful. And I wouldn't treat my partner very good in that way. So, I would say things like, oh, you didn't put those things back where they belong. And, it's irresponsible, and it's kind of mean for me to say that, because what it would look like in recovery is, could you please put the keys back in the same spot, and then put the keys back in the same spot. Like, I got to ask and lay the boundary out. And that's me being responsible. And then if that action still doesn't happen, then I got to figure out another way to figure out the key situation. But I had an issue with things not getting put in the same spot where they were found or picked up. And I would just exhaust myself, and I would say, avoidant language that would, I would say something not very nice to get that negative return or get that mean comment back. And, it doesn't fill anything and it doesn't fix anything. Like, it didn't make that person change and start putting things where they belong, So it just created more distance and therefore created that avoidant, like I'm being avoidant and creating something negative. So I've had to take ownership in what I do and I had to change a lot of the verbal communication that I was having with my partner, and I stopped saying negative things to them, and I started asking for the things that I needed. I started asking for things to be here or be there or be on time, or I started to ask and to do my part to go as far as I can for me with respect to myself and my own limits, right? And then let that other person act how they're going to act, and then judge the situation after and accordingly what my next move will be. Not living in fantasy land and expectation land, living in responsible land. So I didn't know, I used to always say that they were avoidant. And then when I got to the rooms, I found out that there's a handful of things that I was doing that was an avoidant behavior. So I had to start changing all those things. And then that gave me the way to see the avoidant behaviors around. So I didn't realize it was avoidant to, say things to get that anger reaction back, but I used to do it a lot. And the thing with that is it's comfortable. It's like a comfortable feeling to get that reaction. Like I was used to getting that reaction. It's almost like a bit of an endorphin hit because I get that every single time. And so, and because I became more resentful of my partner, I said things to them like that with everything that they did, like all the time. And why don't you do this way? And just something to get that retaliation back. And that is a codependent avoidant behavior, something I used to do. Another thing is I used to value what other people think over what I think. And it's like I didn't trust myself to have my own thoughts and feelings unless you like them, unless you believe them, unless you align with them. And now it's like I value what's going on in my brain and what I think, and I've developed some kind of trust. But before it was all about what you thought of me. It was all about, like, I want them to think what I'm thinking. Like, I always had to pull them over to my side. And now there's detachment, there's space, there's separation. Like, it's two independent people being of value, having values, having valuable thoughts. And there isn't that push and pull. There's just, it's a lot nicer to have that. So what codependency is there isn't a definition. If I'm trying to mop up the ocean, or if I'm trying to take a washing machine up the stairs by myself, I might be codependent. So I used to be that person that did everything themselves, didn't want any help. I know it all. I did it all. And I just thought that was so cool and strong. And I didn't realize that that was pretty codependent of me. And I've created a network now, like a safe network. And I'm constantly reaching out. I'm constantly staying connected, and I'm not using all my own energy and being alone all the time. I'm not isolating. I'm getting out there, and it's I don't think that my higher power wants me to live this life angry and alone and emotional to figure out every single problem on my own. I think my higher power wants me to reach out and to be healthy and to be out there living the world and to be the person that he created. He doesn't want me hiding the person that I am. He wants me to be out there. So, trying to control things that are out of my control. Like I used to try to control huge things and mopping up the ocean and putting in all that effort and just like, I can't believe this ocean isn't getting in this bucket. I can't believe the wind is here. And I can't believe that the waves keep bashing down my house and my sandcastle. Like, and focusing on the frustration and just focusing on how the heck am I going to get the ocean into this mop bucket? Like, that was me in active codependency. How come, how come, I'm not going to get into that, but, just doing so many things on my own, trying to prove that I don't need anyone was me. Like, that was me. And it was just like a big F you, like F you. I don't need anyone. I don't want anyone. I don't care. I'm fine on my own, all my own thinking, all my own problems. I got this. Like, I isolated myself with all that thinking, and I was lonely. And I was lonely and in pain. And I'm not going to fix anything lonely and in pain. I'm just going to have more misery and more pain. And I was in that spot of crisis, of emotional pain. And then I went to these other rooms and I found myself, and I found out how to take care of myself, how to save myself, how to love myself. And, that I did not think that there was more after AA. I didn't think there was anything else. And as I've traveled through, and I still do AA stuff, but as I have gone through these stages of recovery, like every stage was really important to do, like wholeheartedly. I would, did the sober part. I still do the sober part, but I did that just focusing on recovery first, and how do I put recovery first in my life? And then how do I live in the world again? And then how do I take care of my kids? And then how do I take care of me? And then getting into like more emotional sobriety, more emotional work, and then getting down to like the roots of my trauma and a lot of the, these codependent patterns, and then getting into like group trauma therapy, like was another huge thing that opened my eyes, and learning like, there's stuff I see, there's stuff I don't see, there's my blind spot, there's what other people see, and then asking for the feedback, asking for the truth from other people, like other safe people though, like in those intimate, safe spaces, like, am I like this? What do you think? What do you see? Like asking my sponsor, like I have been trying to get to the truth in myself this whole time, and peeling the onion layers and going through the stages of recovery, and having also like going into, I did like a 4-day emotional healing course called Aware. And when I was in that course, the thing is that I can share and say all these things, but then what my body and everything is saying could be saying something a bit off. And then getting the feedback in that group of like, what they would share what they saw and feelings that they saw me have. So it wasn't that I was just having one feeling. There's more messages going on in myself. And then when I was doing this group therapy, I was getting that extra feedback. And when I get that extra feedback, I really can hear more truth about what's going on with myself. And that's also just like living the steps, like step 5 work, and being honest, and like, as I've, I wouldn't recommend group therapy, like that kind of trauma therapy in the beginning. I did it in my 3rd year, but it really opened my eyes. Like like every year there's more stuff to learn. And I just have that mindset to keep uncovering, to stay curious, to keep looking. And not because I'm bad and there's something wrong with me, but because there's more to learn. There's more to gain. And the more that I learn and gain, the more efficient I am. And then I have a more peaceful life. I have more to be grateful for. I have more to give. I have more strength and power. It just keeps coming. It's endless. So, getting out of sticky codependency and dealing with deep-rooted issues is benefiting my life today, and my resentment lists are so much shorter than they used to be. And so, I'm not living in a lot of resentments and anger like I used to, and I'm not mopping up the ocean anymore. I'm moving my sandcastle to a better spot, and then I'm building a really good foundation. So yeah, that's just what I think about what codependency is. And it's only, everyone's got different codependency. And these are some of my stories just on, really working through the deep, dark stuff and getting to the root of it. So thanks.